decks, your source for Warhammer Underworlds and under 30 Temptations of Slaanesh. I'm your host, Brian, today, and today with me is Davey. Davey, how are you?
I'm feeling a little tempted to get this episode underway. We just played a game and we're so fired up that we're like, let's just record this thing. So,
yes, sir.
Yeah, I not too much of a spoiler to say we're both pretty fired up about this warband.
Yeah. And for context, we're recording this on October 2nd, just the day after our Death Gorgeous episode recording. So not much has happened, but we did get a game in.
Yeah.
So this is part of our weekly mini-sode marathon, diving deep into the 4 Death Gorge decks. Giving this a try, let us know what you think of this format. Thanks again to GW for a preview copy of this so that we have time to get more in-depth coverage on this.
Yeah. I mean, courtesy of that means that instead of getting hot takes from first glimpse of cards, we have a chance to play. I think you and I have 8 games or so between the two of us with this warband, just to try them out and get some actual tabletop experience with them and have time to record and get it out there. So that's a key piece of it.
Absolutely. And if you haven't guessed, today we're covering the Thricefold Discord. So we'll be going over their fighter cards, their style, and kind of the hot takes or hot picks of the deck.
Yeah.
So we're going to skip over community shoutouts and any sort of hobby progress or what's going on with you, our usual segments. Like we said, is just recorded yesterday, so not much has happened aside from some extra games.
Yeah.
I've gotten 4 games in with the Discord. You said you got 3 or 4, so
yeah, I got 3 with and 1 against.
Cool. I have not played against them yet, so So we'll get into our main topic, the Thricefold Discord. Did you have any first impressions when you saw these revealed?
I mean, obviously the first impression comes from the models, and we talked some about that last episode, so I don't need to get too into it, but just they're gloriously weird, and they are so different that how each model looks is very different from each one, and that's represented on their fighter cards as well. They're 3 extremely different fighters, and I think the thing I would just hammer home is real thematic. I actually, on the models, one of the things that I find the weirdest and like the most is Vexmore's kind of like ornamental wings. They're not actually wings, but they're definitely like intended to give, like he's some weird butterfly. I don't know. Like
it's like a horrible angel.
Yeah.
I love the, I think it's a Hellraiser quote where it's like angel to some, demon to others.
Yeah. I have not played Age of Sigmar in a long time, but if I was playing, I would be super excited to have these just to represent like heralds or whatever the heck they might be. Like they feel
exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah. I can see like putting Vexmore in the back of a chariot. I don't know. There's all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah. So, just top notch stuff. And that's like, that gets my foot in the door on any warband. Is if I'm excited about your models, then you have my attention. So
yeah, a minor thing for me is like, as different as they are, they also have a cool mirroring aspect. So like Vexmore's 3 move and 5 health. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Lasavir is 5 move, 3 health. So it's kind of like this discordant cross between Vashti is 4 and 4.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. That's a good take. I didn't
notice as much as they're different, they are a lot alike, and I think that like goes to the bickering aspect that they have. Because you have level 1 wizard, a no wizard, and a level 2 wizard as well.
Yeah.
So
oh man, love it.
It's a cool foil.
Yeah. So that was, and my first impression was that they had some of the core mechanics that they were playing with were really interesting to me. The temptations and the false gifts.
My first impression of the temptation was like, it's an ore chosen by your opponent, and I'm just like, cool. How balanced are these choices to where I'm actually going to see both done, or is my opponent always going to choose the one that I'm like, okay?
Yeah. But that was going in. I was like, I feel like there's some options. Like they have some some profiles that might be pretty good offensively. They have some great stuff in their power cards, and then their objectives, as we mentioned, seem a little questionable, but needed to see them on the table to confirm or deny.
Yeah, when coming from Dread Pageant, I feel like they had a really strong objective deck,
Mm-hmm.
and they had I think a middling power deck, but the few that stood out were like American Express cards. Never leave home without it. Just could not leave those at home. Lure of Slanesh and Shared Pain, among others. I just loved Sickening Resilience,
Yep.
but it was a few. The rest of them were kind of like I could leave it, but now with Salvage, maybe that's changed. That has changed a bit.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too off on the side tangent, but it's interesting to revisit old favorites with the new, even just with Salvage, where you're like, oh, this card was fighter restricted and borderline, but now that I can salvage it,
Right.
now I can see some play. So,
but with this, so like coming with that mentality, we see kind of an opposite where their power deck is on fire.
mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting. And surprisingly, mentioning Salvage, none of their cards are restricted aside from to wizards, but when you got 2 wizards in the warband, that's helpful.
Yep. Yeah. I really like that level 2, level 1 setup. I'm trying to think of a time where we've seen that. Have we seen that before?
I think we have.
Okay.
I swear we have.
We've seen warbands with like a couple level
Exile
1s. There you go. Yep. But I really like that setup for redundancy. It's not overly powerful. I mean, I guess also Curse Breakers are a level 2 and 2 level 1s, but but this seems like a nice middle of the road redundancy level where like, hey, there's a fallback. There might be another if you go with Force of Frost, but more on that later.
Yep.
We're gonna break into these in a bit, but should we talk style here?
Yeah, so because, like I said, the objectives are kind of lacking. They don't, at least for me, they don't have like a guiding light. But it's hard to, and I think that's indicative because it's hard to award objectives, or it's hard to make objectives that award for controlling your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that ultimately they are kind of a control aggro style warband. Did you get the same read?
Yeah, I think so. And I think how hard you lean into each depends. The control vibes for me came from a lot of those temptations and false gifts, having ways to affect enemy fighters to reduce, like to turn off things that they can do or shut down certain aspects of their game. And I was like, okay, well, if I can find the objectives that support this, then I'm in business. And so if I can make that happen, then they have control. If how much I can support that determines how much I have to lean back the other way into aggro. And here, control we're using not in the sense of like holding. We kind of define it aggro, hold, and control. Control being like, I'm going to keep you from scoring glory. I must go glory myself. Everyone does it to some extent, but control is really like almost a denial is another way to describe it if you're not familiar with that.
Right. Yeah. So then, what would you say are any standout strengths or weaknesses of the fighter cards or the warband in general with their deck?
Well, like I said, I think that there's a lot to like in the power cards. The gambits, the temptations, and the false gifts have a lot of utility in a lot of different situations. So I think that's particularly good. I think the fact that they're a 3-fighter warband is a strength if you're trying to go with the control route, because they give up. I was going to say they bleed 3 glory. They actually bleed 4. If you kill everybody in the warband, you get 4 glory because Vexmore starts at 5 wounds, which is worth noting. But he's got damage reduction. You have ways of getting some pretty good defensive profiles. So I think those are some things that lead me towards that option of control that helps them out. What did you see?
So it comes in a core box. So like this is potentially a warband that somebody would be starting with. Is there a weaknesses or that you would caution them about if somebody's starting out with this?
So we're used to seeing Stormcast be the ones that are dealing with Inspire mechanics that hinge off of what what specifically do you see on dice rolls? And these guys absolutely struggle with that. A point of comparison was the Dread Pageant, who wasn't really dice roll based, but was often very hard. They're often hard to get that inspire off. And so you kind of game plan around, I'm going to play this game as if I will not inspire. And if it happens, then cool, I'm all the better for it.
Right.
These guys, you are going to inspire some of them, probably not all of them. For example, in the games I've played, I've been part of, I've literally never seen Vexmore inspire as far as I can tell. And some of that is because I when I'm playing, I kind of tool up Vastus. But it is a thing where you don't have a ton of control over it. You can try to do some things like we'll talk about the fighter cards specifically, but some of them inspire easier than others.
Yeah, because as squabbling demons, they inspire when the other one of their own warband fails.
Right.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Vashtish is kind of more reliable. She's that middle of the road. Whereas Vexmore, he's easy to inspire Lassevier. Vexmore is rolling 1 dice on defense, 1 dice on offense, so he's very slothful.
Yeah, 1 dice on casting if you want to risk a gambit on that. So,
yep. Meanwhile, Vashtish, I've wanted to kind of risk her sooner because I want Vexmore inspired on 2 block with his tanky 5 health. And that's far harder than I've gambled.
Yeah.
I have actually seen him inspired twice, and both times it's really effective.
Yeah, I believe it.
Because when he goes to 2 block and 2 hammers, he becomes a lot more reliable and a lot very dependable.
Yeah.
I feel like I was just spamming casting attempts with Vashtish on some spell cards.
Yeah.
Is how I got that.
Should we break down some of these fighter cards just a little bit?
Yeah. So let's start with the big, beautiful man himself, Vexmore. 3 move, 1 block, and 5 health. He's the leader. He's got Slanesh as a keyword, and he's a level 1 wizard. His Indolent Glaive weapon attack is range 2, 1 smash, 3 damage. And he has Locus of Indolence, -1 damage to a minimum of 1 to attack actions that target this fighter if there are no successes in this fighter's defense roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That comes up a fair amount, actually. And you can almost think of it as one thing I noticed was you can almost think of it as like cleave insurance because the cleave rules read as shields do not count as successes in the fighter's defense roll. So if somebody's attacking with cleave, you're either critting out of it, probably, if you manage to roll a crit, or you're getting -1 damage. And that's actually this has been better than I thought it would be. And yeah, pretty handy.
It offers more scenarios for the dice results to be a boon in some fashion. There's still those niche cases where you roll a success, but the opponent rolled better in their attack roll, and so you failed unsuccessfully or successfully,
right.
and it's led to me role playing a little bit where I'm like, you can't even fail successfully, and that's where the most kind of gripiness I get is like, he couldn't even he could have just missed this roll and inspired another fighter, but no.
Yeah. He has this interesting thing with this attack where it's kind of like the wolf bite, the uninspired wolf bite on Rippas, where like it's probably not going to hit, but if it does, that's 3 damage. That's pretty boss. This damage reduction thing is situationally like really problematic for some warbands. Like we just played where I was running Gore Chosen, and I had in hand a kill surge that needed me to kill with the exact damage, and I was like, Vexmore, come on, man. Like I don't like. Are you gonna like duck out of or force me to get not quite the right amount of damage?
Not an appealing target.
Yeah. I would say a weakness for him is he at starting out, he's the lowest defensive profile. We'll get why. Lascivier actually has the same defensive stat, but has some other stuff helping her out.
Right.
Vexmore, just 1 dice on defense and 5 health means that he's a source of 2 glory if you are 2 cavalier with him. So
right.
that's a problem.
And a quick mention is if he inspires when Vashtis fails,
Mm-hmm.
and on his inspired side, he goes up to 2 block and 2 smash for his attack. No
Yeah.
other changes.
Yeah.
So you're really
But
trying to get that, but he is the
yeah.
most difficult to inspire.
Yeah.
Because the
2
other two
smash, 3
are more
damage, 2
reliable.
block with damage reduction if everything fails is really juicy, really nice.
Yeah.
Vashtis, here's my problem. Are we going to move on to Vashtis here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Vashtis is a 4 move, 4 wounds, 2 dodge. You always like to see that. Vashtis is because of the build I was trying with Force of Frost, which wanted to cast a lot of spells. Vashtis was kind of the linchpin with her starting out on casting level 2, flying, which I think I persistently forgot. You don't look at that model and say that's definitely a flying model.
It's just coiled springs beneath her.
Yeah, the a 2 range, 2 smash, 2 damage attack is real solid. A very run of the mill spell attack, 3 range, focus, 1 damage for attacking. Vashtis for the inspire, that spell attack goes up to channels, still 1 damage, but range 4. And this is why Vashtis was such an important piece for me. Is with a control build, especially if a magic control build, where you're trying to run off a lot of spells. I'm going to make a lot of spell attempts. I want a lot of spell successes. Well, the Lash of Slaanesh there, it gives you like a repeatable spell attack that's pretty high accuracy, and that is a way to really kind of farm some of those spell attempts and spell successes.
Right.
So to say nothing of like your level 2 is the one you want to be casting gambits if you really want them to go off. Now, if you want them to fail so you can inspire somebody, well, Vexmore's your guy.
Yeah. There's definitely a magic build where you're leaning on Vashtis more than Vexmore as the leader for your game plan.
Yep.
She does also have an ability, which I find is probably the least apparent one that is propped up. Yep. Vexmore has the damage reduction. She has Locus of Paramountcy, so adjacent enemy fighters cannot be supported while they are the target of an attack action.
Yeah. And even just reading this, because I almost never had it trigger, but if you somehow got a scything attack on her, I don't know if there's a lot of options for that since she's range 2. But if she could find a way to scything, she's going to be pretty accurate with that because she's going to deny all those supports to her targets. And it's not...
We would be talking about this later, but the perfect blade with Mighty Swing.
Oh, gross. Yeah. So adjacent enemy fighters cannot be supported. This actually affects if the rest of your warband's attacking, which is even more corner case, but not nothing. So
yeah, it's neat to have, and don't forget it. Try and keep it in mind, but it's pretty niche, and I don't believe I've yet seen a use case. Maybe I've overlooked it.
Well, I think that's entirely it. I think it's an easy one to overlook on both sides, and so I think you're going to catch some people by surprise there. But only works on offense.
Yeah, yeah. If it was defense as well, I feel like it would be much more.
Yeah, that just leaves your fave. Do you want to cover this one?
Yeah, Lassevier, the Bladed Blessing. Keyword Slaanesh, Assassin, and Brawler.
Woofda, yeah.
Yeah. 5 move, 1 block, 3 health. So a little dainty, but Carnal Blades is range 1, 3 swords, and 2 damage.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty run of the mill until you see the next piece.
Well, they do also have Locus of Carnality.
Exactly.
So this fighter is considered to have an additional supporting fighter. So that's effectively 3 hammers uninspired.
Yeah. Uninspired. And it's effectively 1 more pip on your defense dice because this is not.
Yep.
It doesn't specify attacking or defending. It's both.
Yes. And they inspire when Vexmore fails, which is quite easy considering how slothful he is.
Right.
So I often see her inspire. Yeah. On her inspired side, move, defense, and her wounds don't change. Neither does her Locus of Carnality, so it's just her weapon. Carnal Blades goes up to 3 hammers now, 2 damage, and Grievous 1. So, like you just said, Locus of Carnality means that's 3 hammers plus.
Yeah.
It's pretty rad.
This is one of the most accurate on-card attacks in the game,
Yeah.
before anything gets added. And the Grievous one means now you have a second fighter threatening up to 3 damage, and she's rolling enough dice that, yeah, it might happen.
Yeah.
Here's what I love about this locus of carnality. This is the best locus in the warband. It doesn't say counts as having a supporting fighter, or it says an additional. So if you do generate another support, and all of a sudden you're double supports, and that is not out of the question. I think it happened. It happened in our last game. And because it's on defense, if you find a way, which there is right here in the faction deck, to give an extra defense dice, say get less severe up to 2 block with the Helm of Insight, then it's not just 2 block, it's 2 block and a support. That is a gross defensive profile.
Absolutely. There's some, it's a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
So just in summary, because we've got the 3 fighters and each one of them has a locus of ability. Mm-hmm. So basically they're embodiments of different aspects of Slaanesh. So Vexmore is indolency, which is habitual laziness or sloth. Vashtis is paramountcy, which is the state or fact of being of greater importance than anything else. And then carnality is what you would imagine for Slaanesh is morbid desire or propensity to lewdness. I would have thought more like slashing blades, but no, more Slaanesh on brand.
Yeah, actually, talking about on brand stuff, the Lucifer's got a great quote: "Is give yourself over to me. I can grant you pleasure that will last a lifetime." Yep. What is not said here, but you can read between the lines, that lifetime might not be very long. So.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So, like we said, like 3 really different fighters.
Yeah, which has been on brand for Slaanesh so far in Underworlds, with Dread Pageant having 4 very different fighters.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're very unique. So, moving on to cards, do we want to start with surges or end phase cards? Callouts for strong cards in kind of each of the categories.
Yeah, let's maybe go with the surges.
Yeah, so this is where, like we've mentioned, the objectives kind of struggle, but I feel like that's more in the end phase. The surges, I think there's actually like a lot of tools here. Maybe you don't take all of them, but if a objective pool is going to have its strengths, I think you want them in the surges because they help get the ball rolling and the game plan moving.
Yeah,
get that seed glory, right?
Yeah.
So I think quick call out to Cacophony and Cruel Chorus. So Cacophony is score immediately after your fourth or subsequent casting roll in the same phase for 1 glory.
Just straight up casting roll. Doesn't have to be successful.
Right. So some reliable, like we said with Vashtis, she has an innate spell attack action. So you can just spam that for 4 activations. Not exactly efficient, but it's a backup.
Right. Yeah.
But you also have Cruel Chorus, which is surge, score this immediately after your warband casts a second or subsequent spell in the same phase.
Yeah.
So 2 surges for doing the same game plan. Not bad.
It's these 2 cards just on their own, just the presence of these 2 that maybe say like, okay, there has to be a build that can get me like a sort of magic control, because I have 2 1 glory surges, one of which doesn't care about success or failure, and the other is pretty modest if you're including channels and that sort of thing. Like this feels like a doable setup. So it's funny because all it takes is a couple cards before you're like, hey, there might be a build here, and they are the kind of baseline where you can then maybe fill it in with enough other stuff to make that happen.
Yeah, and if you're returning to the game, magic is back.
Yeah.
This Death Gorge is preceded by Weird Hollow, where we have seen a resurgence in magic. So the Age of Night Vault has returned in a new form, and magic is back, baby.
Yeah, yeah. So the other surges in there, there is Born of Damnation, which I don't want to say it's like a anti-synergy. This is a score immediately after playing your second or subsequent temptation in the same phase. The temptations, I think there's some really great ones. There's some middle of the road ones and some ones that I'm less sold on. And your tolerance for how many you need to have in your deck to feel like you can score this is going to kind of determine whether this can make it. If you're doing the other two, like the magic direction, then you're trying to split your deck between temptations and gambit spells. And that maybe pulls you in a couple of different directions. I think they built the deck, the rivals deck. Actually, these work okay in concert. Mm-hmm. But if you are going Nemesis or Championship, you may have to pick one or the other direction to go.
Yeah. So my call out for the American Express card is Escalating Screams. Surge, score this immediately after a friendly fighter successful supported attack action for 1 glory.
Yeah.
Lasavir can score this by herself.
Yep. And there's even a little bit of Gambit support for this down the way. Lasavir is a great one, though, because this doesn't say you don't have to roll a support for it to happen. You just have to be supported, and Lasavir is really accurate, so really likely to pop this off. So as long as you play safe with Lasavir until you see this, this is a real solid score.
And with 5 moves, she can missile out from the backfield.
Yeah.
Got another Surge card you'd like to call out?
I think the other two are a little bit more corner case. I think they get cut pretty well, so I'd be good moving on to the end phases if you're up for it.
All right, and this is where we get into some slim pickings. Is there a favorite here for you?
I'm going to speak to this from the control aspect, where I'm looking for things that I can score that are relatively reliable. There's not. The short is no, there's not a lot here. I did include Indulgence Given Form in mine. It's just a 1 glory end phase. It has a lot of requirements. So you have to have an inspired friendly fighter. They have to have an upgrade, and they have to be on an objective token. And so it says in an end phase, if 1 or more surviving inspired friendly fighters each have 1 or more upgrades and are each on an objective token.
Yeah, I found this to be bad.
Yeah, 1 or more surviving. So what I'm trying to figure out is if you have more than 1 inspired, do they all have to do this thing? 1 or more surviving. I think you can do it just 1 inspired with an upgrade on an objective. It's a lot to ask. However, if you are a passively scoring deck and can find a way to get that 1 inspired person an upgrade on that, then it's reliable. Yeah, and it does not require a kill. So
it is there for a passive build. Most of the times I was playing this, I was running them with Breakneck Slaughter, and positioning is not very viable when running Breakneck Slaughter. So
sure, yeah, that makes sense. So that was that. The other one I included in a control build was Obsession and Vice, which needs a friendly or an enemy dead with a false gift. It's not great, though. This is definitely me scraping the bottom of the barrel, because you at most have 3 false gifts in deck. You have to get it out, and that fighter has to die. Yeah. It helps that it can be on either side. So I specifically, gave a false gift to somebody and then killed that person so that I would score this. But that is too much setup for a 1 glory. So this is not where the control money happens.
No, I do think Indulgence Given Form has passive play, and considering later discussions, I think it will make it back into my good graces. But Obsession Advice has fallen out of my good graces. It has been too much to ask, and especially for 1 glory. 2 glory, I'd be like, but best case scenario I see this is, Perfect Blade turns off the other upgrades that the fighter has equipped. And turning off an extra wound to cause that fighter to die is my best case scenario for Obsession Advice.
Yeah. There is the only other one I thought about cycling was Triumph of Carnality. It needs 4 more fighters to have wound counters or be dead. That does, late in the game, that just happens.
This is my reliable one.
Yeah.
So unless you get smoked and you aren't able to get anything off on the opponent, even if you're tabled and your opponent has 1 dead, you'll score it.
As long as you put a wound on anybody before you died, you'll score this. But in that scenario, you're in trouble. Yeah. What about you? Because you were more from the aggro perspective with your Breakneck Ballet.
Yeah.
What was there something else that you're reaching for?
So Triumph of Carnality is my faithful. The more difficult to score, but is a big reward, is Triumph of Paramountcy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this one up. This is a weird one. Go for it.
Yeah, so score this in an end phase if a leader is the only surviving fighter in one or more warbands.
Hmm.
So leave their leader alive as the last one, or you only have Vexmore alive.
Yeah.
It was weird because I was playing a game against Skylar. I had Obsession and Vice in hand, and I had Triumph of Paramountcy. I had Vexmore and Lasavir alive,
Uh
and
oh.
Lasavir had a extra wound on her, keeping her alive. Um, and Skylar, instead of trying to kill Lasavir, just walked away.
Oh.
And
Ooh. Oh, that was like
so,
4 glory.
yep, if he had killed Lasavir, it would have been 1 glory for him and 2 glory or 4 glory for me.
Yeah.
So, but it's certainly not a reliable one. You got to really plan for it. It's interesting, but considering the bottom of the barrel as the end phase cards are for this deck, it's considerable, worth considering. I could definitely see if you were doing that passive build and trying to sit back, it'd be a lot easier to keep Vexmore the only one alive if you would just have him in the back and you're just kind of letting them go at Vashtish.
Actually, that is a good point. So I think that might be if you are not. I think if you're going magic, this doesn't fly because Vastus is the one that you're protecting. But I think if you're protecting Vexmore and giving up other people, if Vastus dies, then Vexmore gets really hard to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and there is ways to get Vexmore to be a caster that you as a backup. If probably if we're talking, I don't think we'll get into Nemesis pairings, but I think there's ways. So I do think in Surges we glossed over. We didn't talk about Violent Excess. Score this immediately after your warband, second or subsequent successful attack action that targeted the same fighter in the same phase.
Mm-hmm.
It is more of an edge case, like you said, but I do actually like it. If you're not going with Cacophony and Cruel Chorus, if you're not investing in the casting, then you're left with 2, maybe 3 surges.
Sure.
And Violent Excess would be one of those 3, in my opinion.
I mean, it's not even impossible for this to. I would actually consider slotting this into that control build because a lot of times in that control build where you are like hanging way back, they put a lot of energy into sending trying to get at least somebody forward to engage, and then you have one person that you can pile in on. And then if you're doing it with the Vastus spell attack, like that's a great way. That's a high range, high accuracy thing. It's just the demand of having 2 successful attacks is sometimes a lot to ask.
But there's a lot of support tech.
Yep.
Making more accurate.
If we're talking, I think you and I both included this other end phase. Tell me about euphoric killers. Like lay that out and then give me your thoughts on that one.
Oof. This one, more often than not, has it scored early in one of my early games, but often I just find that I only have 1 fighter remaining.
Yeah, that's been the thing for me too. Like it feels like it should be doable.
Yep.
Because it only asks for 1 fighter to be dead, which that is, in some matchups that's casual that you're going to get that. But the problem is having enough inspired surviving fighters because you need 2 inspired. So I've had it where I got 2 surviving fighters, but guess what? Vexmore still not inspired, or I've got Fascist, she's inspired, but nobody else is alive. So.
Yeah, it's been teetering on the edge for me.
Yeah, it feels. I mean, that 2 glory is enough to keep tempting me, though.
Yeah, I know it's been teetering, and I think my current iteration has it cut.
Yeah.
So that covers objectives. I think there's still plenty to work with here. Is enough for Nemesis. Sure. I think Championship is totally fine. Like these guys are going to be great in Championship, I think.
Mm-hmm.
On to the Gambits. What would you like to highlight first? I think let's at least point out here that there's 3 spells and there's 6 temptations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that leaves one normal ploy.
Yeah. Since I was talking about the spell setup, I'll kind of hit those. I think
Yeah.
Pavan of Slanesh is a great one. It plays just like a temptation. It just needs a channel to go off, and then you can either deal 1 damage or push a chosen fighter 1 hex, and it has to be within 3 of the caster, so it is range limited. I think if you are including this, you maybe even try to play on a board with lethals. You have a low fighter count, so you can try to avoid those yourself, but then position it to be like, hey, I can do a damage to you, or I can push you into lethal and do a damage to you. Like,
Yeah.
One or the other. That's the time I got it off. That's exactly how it
Nice.
played. Acquiescence is a channel, just stagger someone within 4. It's pretty bad until you think about how it maybe factors in. It actually plays in okay with the game plan of cast a lot of spells, because if you stagger somebody, you set them up for more successful spell attacks, whether that be Vashtis's ability or some upgrade you may have put on somebody.
Yeah, and
like
of
that.
note, if it's not a spell attack, then stagger doesn't allow a reroll.
Right, that's true. But it can help you kind of unlock that if you're triggering more of those attacks. And then it's a weird edge case where Vexmore can try to cast this 2/3 of the time he'll get it off, and then 1/3 of the time he will inspire Lasavir. So
Yeah.
if you want to get Lasavir inspired in the power step, well, there you go. And you can think about that as, hey, I'm about to charge with Lasavir.
Right.
I'm either going to boost Lasavir's accuracy by staggering the fighter, or I'm going to boost Lasavir's accuracy by inspiring, because
Right.
Vexmore failed. So those, and then the last gambit is there's this really weird ping, Soul Slice Shards. As a channel, deal 1 damage to an enemy fighter that is furthest from the caster. It is not a choose, so you don't even have to see the fighter you're targeting. And this is something that I think just puts an extra mental tax on your opponent,
Right.
because usually you're like, well, especially in the age of Held in the Bloody Fist off of Paths of Prophecy, whereas, hey, I am going to have somebody damaged and on an objective. You're like, well, don't make it the furthest one away, because I will shred another damage onto that person, potentially killing them. So,
and having the ability to cast this from either Vashtish or Vexmore offers 2 different avenues of setting up who is furthest.
Yep. Yeah. I found this to be more flexible than I thought. I actually quite like that one.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. What about you? Do you want to talk a little temptation?
Yeah, so for the temptations, you got 6 of them. So if you're considering bringing Born of Damnation to use 2 temptations in the same round or in the same phase, how strong are these 6?
Yeah,
I would say 5. I think there's only one that's kind of a never, like, so just to cover the weakest of the bunch, in my opinion. Illusion of Power, Temptation. Each one has slightly different verbiage. There's usually a condition to trigger this, and then you hand the card to the opponent, and they choose either condition. So in Illusion of Power, Temptation, pick an opponent with 1 or more power cards in their hand. That player picks one. Each player, starting with that player, can give 1 upgrade from their hand to 1 fighter without spending any glory points. Or that player discards 2 power cards, or 1 power card if they only have 1 in their hand.
Yeah. It is really hard to picture the scenario where somebody says, yeah, I'm going to discard power cards, rather than let both of us get a free upgrade.
Yeah, I have not yet run this because it's super early edge case. I heard you had some success with it, though.
I don't. Did I?
As I understand it, your opponent chose the free upgrade because they're always going to.
Yeah.
Which is the biggest detriment of this card.
Yeah.
But by getting that free upgrade out, you were able to get another upgrade called Icon of Excess, which essentially gives the Discord the ability to be a little bit of a Diantelos.
Yeah. So get that out, and then exactly. So there's a key one out. I think actually, now I think about it, I might have done this and then laid out. I gave a very vulnerable fighter +1 wound with a false gift, and then killed that fighter and then scored 2 glory. So this basically was like a glory gambit. So now that I remember, it was, combo centric, but like, yeah, edge case, like really things had to line up for it to be, I think, sometimes awesome, most of the time pretty meh.
So here's an FAQ question that I think tackles all future temptations that we're going to talk about. Say you do this and you just happen to guess correctly that your opponent has 5 ploys or gambits. And they can't do the upgrade option.
Right.
So does that mean they do have the condition met where they have cards in hand, but they can't do the free upgrade?
Yeah. So our question is like, it's kind of twofold. Like, what if can I play that? I mean, some of these you just don't know whether they can meet one of the conditions. Some of them you know for sure whether they can meet one of the conditions. So the question is like, if I know that they can't meet one of the conditions, can I still play it? And then if I can, are they allowed to choose the option that's impossible to do?
Right. If they don't have the upgrade, can they still choose that option and you just get the free upgrade?
Yeah.
I think that probably is the case in this case, which makes this card even less, because if they get 5 ploys and they can't do an upgrade and they just allow you to, so it's positive for you, but like we're never going to see them play the discard 2 power cards.
Right. I mean, you have to really draw on some trash, or be really, really scared of an upgrade coming out.
Yeah, and the Slaanesh player not having any glory to spend of their own.
Right.
So very edge case with this card.
But you say you like the other 5, so
yeah. Do you have a favorite of the 5?
I do. It is Words of Praise.
Yep.
This is pick a fighter in one opponent's warband. The fighter picks one. Push that fighter up to 2 hexes towards a fighter in your warband. So drag somebody in, or if they don't want you to do that, then you say that player cannot activate that fire. This effect persists until the end of the phase. Whoa, this used to be done by like saying you get a charge token, but that no longer is as crushing as it used to be.
Right.
So you can read this kind of as you're going to pull somebody towards you because they're going to be really reluctant to pick that other option.
Right.
On occasion, it'll still go off, but you can put somebody in a really tough position with that.
Yeah, especially if they're like lingering next to a lethal hex and they got 1 health remaining. That might be the one time where you'll see the second condition.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up like a very specific scenario, but what you talked about when we were playing earlier was setting up, looking at these temptations in your hand. You're like, okay. And it's so thematic, right? Like I'm going to make this so that both options are as bad as I can possibly make them.
But here's another option is you play this on a hold objective warband where like say you have Zarbags and they want to hold objectives with a wizard. Play that on Zarbag.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're already passive and they're just sitting back and not doing anything.
Yeah. I mean, it is real solid. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Some great control there.
Yeah.
Irresistible Feast needs to be talked about. This is temptation. Play this only if 1 or more enemy fighters are adjacent to 1 or more friendly fighters. Pick an opponent. That player picks one. That player deals 1 damage to each fighter adjacent to 1 or more fighters. Or I, the Thricefold Discord player, deal 1 damage to a fighter in that player's warband.
Yeah. It's interesting where, and I haven't thought through the different cases, but the 2 options are, one is that the opponent deals 1 damage to every fighter, or you deal damage to a fighter of your choice. So the source of the damage is an interesting distinction between these two. I haven't really thought about what that exactly means, but yeah.
So
go ahead.
If you're playing against Wormspat, don't. But the card requires that you have some skin in the game. So my thought is, as long as the Thricefold Discord player can get 1 character adjacent to 2 enemy characters or fighters, then they're going to let you ping them once rather than they ping everybody. Because say the Thricefold fighter is adjacent to 2, all 3 of them are getting pinged.
Yeah.
But what I found too is if you're playing against a lot of fighters and they have multiple people on spawn points that are adjacent to each other, those people are also getting pinged. It's not just the people in adjacency with the Thricefold player.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like swarm warbands beware, but then they're just going to pick the one.
Right.
So my favorite way to contemplate making this as bad as possible for my opponent is if they already have a vulnerable fighter who's like critical, like say Zarbag on an objective, who needs to be the wizard holding, would they take that damage on their whole warband rather than let Zarbag get pinged, sniped?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is a terrible choice to have to make. And I think that's how you want to run these.
Yeah. It's fun to contemplate.
Yeah.
So run through another one that I like is well-earned rest. Temptation, pick an opponent. That player picks one. You give a fighter in that player's warband that has no tokens, 1 charge token, or you can remove up to 2 move and stagger tokens from surviving fighters.
Yeah.
So you can free up your own options, or you can give an opponent fighter a charge token.
Right. Yeah, and you have the choice of who gets the charge token. It can't be somebody who's already moved or already has. Actually, if they've already been put on guard or are staggered, then all of a sudden they're no longer eligible for this. But most of the time that I've dropped this, it has been the other one, the 2 move and stagger. And this comes back to our question about what happens if there are no move and stagger tokens anywhere on the board.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that an option that can be picked? Because if you pick, I mean, up to 2 could be 0, but if 0 is nothing, like we have a weird precedent from healing, like healing 0 is not healing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, and the condition is just pick an opponent. So this card can go off, and then one of the facets can be met. So the card can be played.
Yeah.
But can the opponent just pick the option that results in nothing?
Yeah. I think this is one that you can set up better by taking what looks on the surface like a pretty tame move. So, maybe move Lasavir into a move on to an objective or something like that, or move forward a little bit so you're still relatively safe, but now you're within 5 range of somebody, and then now you drop this and you say, okay, like you can either let Lasavir have a charge, or you can have one of your fighters no longer able to activate until you're charged out.
Yeah, and I could see where if you're playing like Breakneck Slaughter and you're out of position due to momentum stuff, getting a little bit into the Nemesis pairing, but I could see you having to make a move in order to get back into position, and then you want to set up a charge.
Yeah.
Well, no. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of possibilities. So I think how clever you are about setting up the board for these things will determine how much mileage you get out of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of running through the last 2, I think last 2, right? Yeah. Vision of Wealth, pick an opponent with 1 or more unspent glory points. That player picks one. You push a fighter up to 2 hexes towards the nearest objective token, or that player spends 1 glory point. So can be big early.
Yeah, what I missed on this previously is that you push a fighter up to 2 hexes toward the nearest objective token, and it is not warband specific. So it could be a friendly, it could be an enemy. Like you have, if your opponent chooses that option, you have a ton of flexibility on who gets pushed. The thing is that unless it's early in the game, that 1 glory point being spent is not that big a deal.
Right. Yeah, so this one's often left home as well with Illusion of Powers. So,
which is weird, yeah, because like early in the game, like if it's their first glory, this is crushing. Like this is a really big deal. If it's late in the game, this is absolutely nothing.
Yep.
So,
yeah. And the last one, Heart's Desire, Temptation, pick an opponent. That player picks one. You push 1 fighter in that player's warband up to 2 hexes, so that fighter is adjacent to 1 or more fighters from your warband. Or stagger each fighter from that player's warband that is within 3 hexes of 1 or more fighters from your warband.
Yeah.
So this one, if you make your first activation charge with one of the Thricefold fighters into the depths of their warband, you play this, and essentially you can bring somebody closer to another one of your targets, drag them they just have to be like, maybe drag them through a lethal is ideal scenario, or you're threatening staggering a bunch of fighters on their warband.
Yeah, and this push is a little more flexible than I first realized. You used it today on me, and it is not like push 2 hexes towards one of your friendly fighters. They do have to end adjacent, but you could
Right.
push them if they're already like next to somebody. You could push them 2 to be next to somebody else. You could push them 2 to like kind of circle around an existing adjacency. So this is a little bit more of a flexible push than I first realized until you busted it out. And that global stagger is pretty gross too. So.
Yeah, or just simply pulling them off of an objective.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
if you're in their midst and you don't want that stagger,
leave the objective or be very vulnerable to getting killed off that objective.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is a solid one.
Yeah, I do like this one a lot.
Yeah.
All right. I think that just leaves us with one remaining ploy, Sublime Harmonies. You want to break that one down?
Sure. Yeah. This one is another one that is like kind of game state dependent. Early on has the potential to be extremely powerful, later less so. But this is in the next activation, each friendly fighter supports each friendly fighter within 3 hexes. So if the Thricefold are all close to each other, this is like the one card where they kind of work together. And I love the art on this.
Their Vexmore and Vashtis are like singing.
Yeah. Singing Vexmore is my spirit animal right now. But this is kind of a tremendous accuracy or defensive boost. You were leveraging multiple cards that gave double defense dice. If you have somebody who's all of a sudden 2 defense dice with full supports, no matter where you attack them from, oof. And supports are not like blocks or dodges, which can be negated by cleave and snare. So I think you had one point where you just played this card. I was attacking into a staggered fighter, a staggered Vexmore, and I basically was going to have to get 2 successes or a crit because every face of the dice was going to be successful for you.
Yeah. Well, and what had happened was I had played another ploy in order to put him on guard.
Yeah.
So that Vexmore was, it was only 1 dice, but that made full support with guard meant that he was every die facing was a success. And Davey only rolled a single success.
I know. Yeah. Drum, you fool. That was a rough start. So cool. What I love about this is that it is offensive and defensive in nature.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's busted. I think it's solid. I think it sometimes might end up as your 11th or 12th gambit. But I think situationally it can be incredibly powerful, especially bring it with you if you are bringing, is it Escalating Screams, the one that wants supports? Yeah.
Which I called that my Never Leave Home Without It American Express card. So I'm bringing Sublime Harmonies because I find that this card is always useful. Even if it is kind of like the only time it's not and it's dead is if you're down to 1 fighter remaining,
right?
Which has happened.
Yep.
So cracking into upgrades, we've got 3 false gifts that we've previously mentioned. What's your favorite of the 3?
Oh man.
And how do they work on it?
Okay, so at their core, every one of these gives a benefit and a drawback, and they can be given to a friendly fighter, or you can pick a specific enemy fighter to give them to.
Right, so they have a pro and a con, but massive versatility.
And so what I love is that you can be like, all right, I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this where it does the most benefit. So if there's a friendly fighter where the benefit is great, like for example, we already talked about it, but Last Severe getting the Helm of Insight, which is 2 block, which cannot be modified further. Also on Last Severe is on 2 block and counts as always having a support. That's a great defensive profile. And the drawback in that case is don't have line of sight to fighters more than 2 away.
Last Severe don't care.
Yeah, range 1. And it was like, oh man, I had a line on maybe killing Last Severe, and this feels real bad. All three of these false gifts also have you get a action called resist, which is break this card. But man, the the penalty of spending an entire activation to break something, like if somebody gives up one of their 12 activations in a game, that's just straight up a win right there. So,
Yeah, I will take that. Have you seen anybody break it?
Nope.
Same.
Nope. Yeah, and it often has to do with the timing of placement, like playing it late in the round or playing it right before. Often I'll play it like right before. It makes a big difference. So, if I put invincible armor, which is +1 wound, -2 move, that's oftentimes great on your own stuff. I'm going to move somebody out of kill range, but it could be used to say like, hey, you have one activation left and you need your full movement to make this charge. Here's -2 move. And they're like, well, great. Now I can't make this charge. So maybe they just break it or maybe they just cycle. But that activation is such an expensive thing. I've never seen somebody do it.
Yeah. So you mentioned invincible armor, +1 wound. Like, we love the idea of potentially putting this onto a fighter, making them large and breaking a bunch of upgrades that they have with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also just -2 move, making them more, restricting them to a minimum of 0, so they can go to 0 move. You can make one of the chosen axes completely immobile.
Yeah,
it's fascinating to contemplate. I find many of these that I will I'll be happy to put them on my own fighters, but then those niche cases where you're like, oh, you're gonna hate this, and you pay the glory, like, hey, look, it cost me something, and like, and the last one, Perfect Blade, I think is probably spiciest.
I'd agree.
So Perfect Blade, False Gift, it is an attack action, range 1, 3 smash, 3 damage.
That is a great attack action.
It's a fantastic one. This fighter is not considered to have any other upgrades or attack actions other than this attack action.
Right.
Boom.
That is wild. And this is where I can really get carried away in like magical happy dreamland or whatever, where I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm thinking of Ephelim, who is like dealt to the nines, has the I'm going to heal after every time I take damage. I have extra damage for my spell, or whatever the case. And you're like, no, actually, you have a cool sword.
Yeah, let me just give you the layer blade. And now you're just fixated on this blade, and nothing else matters, only this.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, there are so many use cases for this, right? So,
and because you also take away the fighter's own attack actions, you can give this to Mollog or Kanan, and they can't make their scything attacks.
Yep. Again, back to Ephelim, you say you no longer have a range 4 attack action.
Yeah.
You give it to anybody with defensive tech. Somebody who's like you were doing to me, where you're like, hey, my fighter's got 2 block, this one's got 2 dodge or whatever, and you give this out and you say, actually, you don't have that. You are back to your base defensive profile with no other tech. And so I think a lot of people are going to pick up this sword right before they die.
Yep. And that's the other thing is, like I said, best case scenario with Obsession and Vice, if you give this to a fighter who's vulnerable, but they have a +1 wound upgrade, this turns that off and they die instantly.
Yeah. I think the highs of these false gifts are so high that I have a hard time imagining bringing this warband and not bringing those 3 false gifts with them.
I think you take all 3 every time.
Yep, I have so far every one I've built, and I've never been sad to see one in my hand.
Yep. I mean, you got an Infection, Great Fortitude with Invincible Armor. I mean, who's able to just go up to 2 block when they want to with an upgrade?
On demand,
and then Perfect Blade, I don't need a great strength. 3 damage is basically what everybody's striving for.
I mean, we talked about all the downside of Perfect Blade, like using it against, but here's the thing, I talked about how Vexmore has not inspired for me ever. Like, well, just kidding. He is now 3 smash, 3 damage. Sure, he's not range 2 anymore, but put that late in a round, and all of a sudden he's a finisher that is legit.
And even if you're just left with Lassavir, she's gonna still make this supported. So it's 3 hammers supported. I mean, she's already smacking 3 hammers, 2 damage with Grievous, but
but if you just want to make sure that you don't have to roll the crit, it's so good.
I think the only person who doesn't like it is Vashtis.
Yeah, that's true. But there are even going to be cases where Vash just wants the, hey, I've got move 4, I'm flying. Give me the chance to finish the game with a 3 damage, highly accurate attack. I'm gonna go for it.
Right.
Yeah,
Or, if your opponent charge and misses, fails to kill Vashtis and they're range 2 or like at a
yeah,
distance,
yeah,
Vashtis, you put Perfect Blade on them, Vashtis just charges or moves just out of range and they can keep poking them for the rest of the game while they just sit still with. Well, I suppose they could still move, but they have to take 2 activations to try and use the Perfect Blade
yeah,
against her.
yeah, yeah. And as previously mentioned, there is the Perfect Blade Mighty Swing combo.
Yeah, that would be mental.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so obviously huge fans. This is one of my favorite things about this warband is these false gifts. It's such a cool mechanic. Love it, love it, love it.
Yep. But that's not all they have for spicy upgrades.
Yep.
They do also have an in-faction great strength. But this is only when the target is already wounded. Sadistic epitome.
I think you say that epitome.
Epitome? Oh, yeah, epitome.
Yep.
Boy. So +1 damage to this fighter's attack actions that target an enemy fighter with 1 or more wound counters.
What range did you say was it limited to?
What?
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 No range limitations. Hello.
Hi. Spicy.
Yeah, very nice.
And Vashtis, when she inspires, she goes up to range 4 with her spell attack. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It is a saucy upgrade. Very good.
Yep.
I was including it even in my control builds that were not super caring about killing so much as like trying to deny. But I was like, this is too good to not pick up.
And we already talked about they have a temptation for a ping. So you got a way to... And they also have a spell to cause a ping to the furthest from the caster. So if you set that up, lay the foundation.
Yep. Yeah. In a environment that has plenty of access to different pings, this is real tempting. Oh. Tempting, he says.
We still good?
No, yeah. I'm catching my own unintended pun. This is very tempting. LOL.
Good one.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to call, or do you have something?
No, go for it. If you got one you're excited for, do it.
Oh, I love the idea of Song of Corruption. Enemy fighters within 2 hexes of this fighter support this fighter's attack actions other than scything attack actions if they are not the target of that attack action.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That was a lot. That was wordy. Well, the art says it all. You've got Vexmore attacking Morgok and Art Skull's winding up behind him.
It's pretty amazing art, yeah.
The fighter who is equipped with this upgrade is being supported by enemy fighters within 2 hexes of this fighter.
Yeah. So this doesn't feel like an auto take, but it feels like a meta take. Like if you're saying like, hey, I think there's a situation where I'll be facing, high enough fighter counts or whatever. It's cool though. It is an accuracy upgrade as long as people are standing, relatively close together. If nothing else, I'd love it for the mechanic, and I will include it until it stops delivering.
I like it because escalating screams is still a thing. So even if you're down to 1 fighter and it's not last severe, you can get support from your enemies. I've scored escalating screams a couple times because of this. And on top of that, Fearsome Fortress is still a thing. So brawling in the middle and clustering is still popular.
Yeah. Yeah. Real solid. You mentioned in passing, I want to call out Icon of Excess.
Oh yeah. No, I wasn't gonna go on without that.
So it's restricted to a caster. Again, you've got 2 of them, or more if you're going Force of Frost. And this is a spell action, so a whole action to do. Goes off on a focus. The caster takes 1 damage, all sounding pretty rough so far. But if it goes off, then every surviving friendly fighter not range restricted, can make one move or one attack action.
Yikes.
And I don't think they all have to be the same.
No.
I'm not sure. So it looks to me like each fighter can pick, which is crazy. So you can do this, maybe move one fighter for a positional thing and then have the other two attack or whatever. This is incredible. And then repeatable, as long as you have health. And so I included in the sort of cast spells control build. This is situationally spectacular. And then if you're down to one fighter, then it's a nothing. But
yeah, if you're down to one fighter, it's nothing.
Well, it's not even, I mean, it may still be something, if you needed one more casting roll or one more successful spell cast, this may still get you something. I know that's situational, but situational is not nothing. So.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but the caster still gets dealt the damage whether or not the casting roll is successful.
Interesting. Yep. So it does say deal 1 damage to this fighter if cast. Yep. So it doesn't say if cast deal 1 damage. It says deal 1 damage, and then the next line is if cast. So yeah, you are correct.
So it's rough. So in my ideal world, I put this on Vashtish, and I'll even give her invincible armor, and I can use this 4 times. Don't think we need to talk about many of the other upgrades. I don't think I've taken. Unnatural swiftness is +1 move and +1 dice to this fighter's range 1, range 2 attack actions while this fighter has no move or charge tokens. Yeah. So if you've got a fighter sitting around, they get +1 dice to their range 1, range 2. Yep. And when they do decide to move their butt, they will get +1 move in that endeavor, but they lose the +1 dice because they will gain the move and or charge token.
Yeah, I think that is actually fairly worthwhile. And then if you happen to be taking the, well, I guess it's move or charge, but like there's a little bit of extra benefit if you are using the well-earned rest temptation, where you can peel a move off of a fighter that has this. So yeah, I think it's not busted, but I think it's very solid. It's really good. I think it's really good in Rivals, and then worthy of consideration in Nemesis.
Yeah, and real quick, Davey, why is Gourmand of Pain a trap?
So Gourmand of Pain is a spell reaction, needs a focus to go off, so kind of a bit. Then used after an attack action if this fighter is the target. If cast, deal 1 damage to one fighter within 1 hex of this fighter. So the only way this is going to work is if they did not drive you back, or if they were goofy and drove you back next to somebody else on their team. I guess you could actually use it to damage your own folks to trigger some of the objectives that we didn't even talk about. But that is like goofballs level corner case. So the only time I can see this being a thing is if you are pairing this with Void Curse or something.
Yeah,
which I don't think you're going to do. Like I think their profiles are such that you probably aren't Void Cursing. I could be wrong. I mean, Void Cursed is cool. And if you have the ability to like take out of sequence moves and then remove move tokens, then maybe. But it's a trap. It needs, for it to be good, it needs bad choices from your opponent or combo play.
And I think range 2 is prevalent enough to where they'll just be like, okay, I won't be adjacent.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. They have a weapon upgrade. They have another upgrade to like cause damage to themselves in order to push after each activation.
Damage yourself due to speed. Yeah.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that covers the warband. Davey, any closing thoughts on that?
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about pairings real quick,
of course.
what we might pair them with. So I'm gonna throw it back at you. And mostly because you thought of a great name for it, Breakneck Ballet. What drew you to that right away?
If listening to our Death Gorgeous episode, just having the kind of freedom to embrace the lack and like not caring about positioning and just kind of go with the fun of Breakneck Slaughter being Tooth and Claw meets billiards.
Yeah.
So basically it was in the box, and I felt Force of Frost didn't have as many objective synergies with Thricefold Discord, so that's where predominantly what took that or sealed it in. for what I was testing. Um, and yeah, just kind of like leaning more aggro than control in this case.
Sure.
It's it's been successful.
Yeah.
You and I's our game was really close.
Really close,
I
and
got off to a good
one very accurate miss away from being a
yeah
blowout in your favor.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like really aggressive, really strong start. But yeah, as far as it's been good, I've had to make some iterations, changes, added some things, subtract some things, but it still brought a predominant um, majority of the Thricefold cards. I think my current iteration has 5 objectives from Breakneck Slaughter, and
Mm,
then 3 ploys or three gambits and 3 upgrades out of Breakneck Slaughter. So
sure. For me, if I was reaching into the box, I already mentioned I took Force of Frost, and this was mostly because I thought again talking about the two surges, the chorus and the other one, basically the two magic casting surges. Like, can I couple those up with a deck that does a lot of casting? And because Force of Frost has it has Bitter Storm, which is a 2 glory surge if you successfully cast 4. I was like, wow, that is crazy, and you can do that. That is a 2 glory surge that you could successfully cast in the power step. And then the deck comes with a couple of spell actions. So on top of that, there's ways to farm more casting attempts. Like that feels like something. So let me work from there.
and if you're leveraging Icon of Excess, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting all the aggro, and you're successfully casting. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. It could even be 2 successful casting, because if you get Icon of Excess and then Vashtis also spell attacks, you can get 2 out of the same activation.
That sounds excessive.
Exactly. It also has Cold Snap, which is if a spell takes somebody out of action. And guess what? Force of Frost has a couple of pings, and you already have a couple of pings potentially in-house between Pavan if they decide to take the damage, or the attack the farthest, the shards spell. So that was kind of the core of it. And then
Maybe you just said there's more pings in Force of Frost. Perhaps in the future we should do a debate-isode about, are there too many pings in the game? Is the prevalence of pings?
That may be a worthy debate-isode if we ever finish doing deep dives.
Oh, we will. We'll get there.
Yeah. So that, and then if you listen to the previous episode, then you know that I'm a fan of Cold of the Void, which is a nobody standing next to anybody. So that's a low interaction one that you can score and make people think. So I think there's a lot to be gained there. And then also talking about control stuff, Frostworm Cloak, which has damage reduction. There is Armor of Ice, which brings you up to 2 block. That is nifty. And then if you are trying to really lean into spells, there's the Everwinter Staff. So you can even make Last Severe a caster to give you some redundancy there. On top of that,
I can Stormcast too.
Yeah, exactly. And then Winter's Hunger is like, do I have a bunch of ice counters on somebody? Well, then they score. And so that's the kind of stuff. If you're running a control build, you want to be like, can I score this decent glory card without having to interact heavily? And that's one of them. So that is why I reach for Force of Frost. Chasm Key, another one. But that sounds, I'm leaning towards deep dive here.
Sure. Yeah.
I just but there was a lot that made me think this is possible. Making it as a Nemesis deck meant I was like, it's like any Nemesis deck where you're like, hey, this is 80% awesome and 20% like I feel bad about these last inclusions. So,
but I leaned Breakneck Slaughter because of the objective strength. Did you find that the objectives were scoring well in Force of Frost?
They were doing okay, but it really leaned on Vashtis. Like if I had to keep Vashtis safe at all costs, was what it came down to. So,
yeah. So I thought that there would probably be some play with seismic shock. I've been looking at it from the perspective of hold objective mainly, and not so much wizards, because I was using like Zarbags and I mean Ephilim's a bit, but I ultimately went with Fearsome Fortress for the past season. But seismic shock, as I'm looking at the upgrades, there's a lot of passive potential here, and I think that might lead to a problem with like, even if Exmoor is only level 1, like I think the ability to, with Cacophony and oh shoot, what's the other card? The Chorus something.
Yeah.
Those two surges on top of being able to just bring a bunch of extra spells and just sit back and cast. There might be something here. I've claimed the prize. Just hold 2. Potentially, if you are able to keep the 3 alive, if you want to get greedy with Shape the Realm. I don't think so. Sorcerer's Treasure Hunter definitely has more appeal to me. One or more friendly wizards are holding an objective, and one or more of those wizards have 3 or more upgrades. You have 2 options there. And they have a lot more. It's like some lower scoring ones, but Sorcerer's Treasure Hunter is 2. Claim the Prize is 3. It compared to how poor the end phase cards for Thricefold Discord, I think Seismic Shock has some reliable stuff.
Sure.
That I'm gonna have to do a lot of experimenting with. Exploit the lane lines, Burnt Out.
Yeah.
Manipulating the Realm Sphere. It's half baked right now at best, but willing to share that. Keep an eye out. Yeah, I think they got some great potential. I do think they are a strong warband, but they're not a like immediate out of the box. I don't think they have the power disparity of Gnarlwood or Weird Hollow's box pairings. I feel like Weird Hollow is definitely closer than Gnarlwood, and this is even closer.
Yeah.
Out of the box, do you think they're the favorite of the 2? Which means Siren Eye and Discord?
I mean, kind of, but it feels close. Like the games I've had, in my experience, Thricefold has won the matchups that I've done, but they've been like 1 attack action away from just collapsing. And that's the nature of running a 3 fighter warband is sometimes you're down to 1 fighter and you need 1 attack to miss to keep that 1 fighter alive. And then you can really start to roll from there. So,
yeah, I do think they have a slight edge, but I feel like that might just be Siren Eye needing a little bit more time.
Yeah. Yep, that's fair.
Any thoughts on Championship? Is there... I think that they are going to be able to, like, when you totally tear open the options of all the objectives to them, I think they're going to be just fine. They're going to be great in Championship.
So I think we talked about a build that I did with Force of Frost and a potential build you were thinking about with Seismic Shock. I think if you have access to both those, there is definitely a magic build that is pretty solid there.
Yeah, because neither of them are plot locked.
Right, exactly. I think you just lean hardcore into those, and then you still have access to a plot lock somewhere if you want.
It's wild.
Yeah. So I think that has a ton of access. I also want to play around with kind of a Toxic Terrors and Paths of Prophecy. Also not plot lock, so you can still reach elsewhere. But try and go control without the use of spells. And this is a little bit harder objective wise, but you then can take the what's the Paths of Prophecy one? I'm thinking of Devoted Offerings, where you have done 3 gambits, 3 ploys, right? So Devoted Offerings doesn't play nicely with spellcasters because if you're using gambit spells, it dilutes you too far. But if you step away from that and go gambits hard, I think there's a lot of you take the control poisons that come with Toxic Terrors and some of the passive scoring that comes with Paths of Prophecy, and you may have something to build there with whatever you mix it with. So those are the two routes again, because I'm trying out with the control builds, but you did the breakneck slaughter. What, if we're thinking aggro wise, like what championship considerations do you have?
Well, you got me thinking that like a passive control build would be really nasty with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, breakneck slaughter. Breakneck slaughter I find is crazy because it offers the defensive upgrades as well. Like tooth and claw was kind of purely offense.
Yeah.
But really, you only need to buff up Blast Severe
Yeah.
is the one really standing out. But Vexmore, if he doesn't inspire,
Yeah.
could use the help too. Um, just leaning full aggro. I don't know if they need Void Curse Thralls with the extra move actions and mobility in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you got Weighty Blessing on somebody and you can take them up to 3
Oof.
block, it's like, oof.
Yeah.
Also, a favorite card of mine is Sadistic Stab.
I was trying to remember what that was called. Yeah, because that unlocks for Slaanesh even more.
Yeah, it works so much better for Dread Pageant because Dread Pageant. So what Sadistic Stab is after the attack roll. No, it's after the defense roll. So you get to see what the results are. You can choose whether or not to use it. You're going to deal an extra damage to the opponent and a damage to yourself.
Yeah.
If you're Slaanesh, you also have Cleave in the attack action. So if you need that to break through, it's massive. Dread Pageant like it more because if the attack action is successful, the cow or Dread Vasilak can just heal that damage you just caused yourself in the same activation.
Yeah.
Not so here, but Cleave is still accessible here.
Sure.
So I
mean, this makes that Lassevier missile really frightening. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Hmm.
I'd have to even look again at some Grand Alliance like Wizard. They've got to have some Wizard stuff that I've been overlooking because that all came out before Wizards were a thing. Yeah, it's got my brain buzzing, and that's what you want out of a new warband.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that wraps things up. Any last things you wanted mentioned?
I think what makes this. I mean, I've covered it a bunch of times, but I think having a unique mechanic, having casting, but like 3 very different fighters means that there's a lot of options that are available to this warband. It feels like they're wide open to building. Like when you're running Breakneck Slaughter at me, and I was running, for reference, I was running the Void Cursed Gore Chosen. I think I've called them Gore Cursed Thralls.
Mm-hmm.
That is a pretty aggro warband that has great end phases because they're so reliable. And you came close to like tabling me part of the way through round 2. Like it was just that much output and speed and damage options that you had. And so me having spent so much time building towards like control options, I was really impressed by like how aggro you were able to be with those guys, and how on the back foot I was with my own aggro warband.
Yeah. I do really like that matchup, like Gore Chosen versus Discord. It's because Elite 3 fighter chunky warbands. I really like how they've differentiated the two.
Yep.
Just thematically is really, really cool.
Absolutely. What about you? Any final thoughts here?
Having seen the mortal side with Dread Pageant and now the demon side with Thricefold Discord, this is not Slaaneshi of me to say, but I'm quite satisfied. However, I feel that's also because I feel spoiled with the recent wave of fantastic chaotic releases, Evelyn, Scabix, even Gnarl Spirit, as problematic children as they are. They've all been really fun to play, and the party continues for me with Thricefold Discord. But that being said, bring it on. I want to see more.
Yeah.
I want maybe some Slaves to Darkness would be on my wish list, but otherwise Chaos has quite a roster right now of fun and interesting warbands.
Concur.
All right. So I think that's it for us. You can reach out to us at What the Heck's Cast on the format formerly known as Twitter, now X. And you can email us at whattheheckscast@gmail.com. Check out all of our content at themortalrealms.com. And special thanks to the Mortal Realms for allowing us to be a part of their greater network. Check out their content as well. Dogs of Warcry and Path to Story. Narrative themed Age of Sigmar content there for you. Coming up, we've got 3 following minisodes covering Sirenized Razors, the Force of Frost, and Breakneck Slaughter. We are still wanting to cover this rotation, so give us your Harrowdeep era cards or interactions that you'll be glad to see go or wish were staying. General thoughts on that, and we'll, maybe get an episode talking about all that. Davey, are you ready for a flavor text quiz?
I really hate when the tables are turned like this, but yeah, go for it.
All right. So it is obviously from the card pool of Thrice Discord.
Yeah.
It's hard
I have, well, okay. I'm filing away. I'm writing on a piece of paper what my prediction is, but you go for it.
Okay. Oh, so tables are turned. You're trying to see if I'm predictable? All right. It's hard to feel like you're besting a foe when they enjoy it.
Ooh. This is not, so I was very confident that you were going to pick the one that is, I thought you were going to pick Euphoric Killers, which is Corn Cares Not. No, everybody wins. This last year, the bladed blessing. This feels like an objective, and I bet you it's the objective where like everybody's wounded. And I can't remember what that one's called. It's something about, it's like pain or something, fueled by pain or something.
He is correct. Fueled by pain.
Right. Yeah. That's a great flavor text quiz, because that's when you can like logic out based on that, like on the quote itself. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. So your recommended listening for today, picked by me. I'm going to stick with my theme. This one's by Lords of the Trident from their album Frostburn, and this is Kill to Die, a ludicrous track.
I'm going to counter with you're going to get a twofer, because I'm going with a Steve Earle, I Ain't Ever Satisfied.
Oh,
and that is, off of Exit Zero. So
excellent. All right. That's all for us. I've been your host, Brian.
And I've been Davey.
So cracking into objectives.
Let's try it again. Upgrades.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Very nice. Isn't there a seismic shock thing, which is after you make a spell action, you heal one? Am I?
That would be nuts.
Listen to us clicking on keyboards.
Yeah. Is it an upgrade or?
It's in Seismic Shock. It is an upgrade. Well, what am I thinking of? I guess I'm gonna.
Are you thinking of something from Phil's Magic build, or you're thinking of Mazik's Magefish?
That's it, Mazik's Magefish. Yeah. Which is probably about to rotate.
And that's after a spell attack action?
Boom, boom, boom.
Clicking again.
Mazik's Magefish. Yeah, it's a Harrowdeep era card.
So it's going to be
rotate. Yep. After the spider's spell attack action or spell or spell action, so it would work.
Oh, it would.
Spell action or spell attack action if it's cast. So it has to be cast, but yeah, you could heal one or give a guard.
Some real busted relic play here.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a lot of stuff I can cut out. Cool.
Yep.